Hey guys, this is Adrian from PDC coming at you with yet another video. Today I have another really special guest. He is my longtime self-declared rival and who I respect as the strongest player in the Bay. It is my honor to introduce Alan Gee, otherwise known as Yatai, because he recently, just today, placed top 6 with Sakazuki in the PPG online regionals. So, without further ado, Alan, nice to meet you, man. How are you doing?
Hi, riding on a high. Can't
Riding
believe
on.
I got 6 today.
Yeah, congratulations, dude. A lot of really close encounters. Could you kind of introduce yourself to the audience? Tell them a little bit about yourself and your background.
Yeah, so this is actually One Piece is actually my first TCG, and the reason I got into it is because I just love the One Piece manga so much. And I played a few card games like Hearthstone online before, and when I first took a look at the game, it felt really similar. The Dawn system is kind of like their mana system, and I really liked how instead of just wasting mana, which I do a lot in Hearthstone, you can actually use it, attach it, and just go for bigger swings. Yeah, and ever since I heard about it, I was researching. I played a few games online back when there was no sim. I used and played it on Tap, and I was just really loved it. Went to all the super pre-releases I could, and then I did my first tournament in set one. That was in Las Vegas with Play TCG. I got top 32 there, and ever since then it lit a fire under me, and I've been loving the game.
That's awesome. Yeah, so one of the reasons why I think you're such a strong player is not because you're incredibly skilled right now, but because you've been consistently topping since you started playing this game, competitively. So can you let the audience know a little bit about your recent or your history of topping? What decks you've been playing and all that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So in total, I've had about 6 top 8 finishes. I have 4 serials now, and the highest finish I've ever had was second place. So in set one, that was when I played in Las Vegas. I played Supernova Kid, like most people did, and that was when I got the top 32. Then in set two, I still played a bit of Supernova Kid, but I also switched to Luffy, just because I felt like it had so many nice answers with you could now stack the 9-cost Whitebeards. You had so many removal options to deal with most of the meta. And with Luffy, I was able to get top 8 twice in back-to-back regionals one weekend. Then on to set 3, that was when Whitebeard was dominating, and I felt like Supernova Kid still had a decent shot against it because the 8-cost kid was able to buy us some time, and the Basil Hawkins did a lot of work against Whitebeard. So with that, that's where I got my highest finish, second place as Kid. Moving on to set 4, I felt like Kid was starting to fall off. Luffy was struggling. So I moved on to another deck I've always wanted to try, and it was really fun to play with, which is Red Green Law. And with that, I got top 8 twice. Moving on to set 5,
Back to back, by the
Law.
way, for the audience. Back to back top 8. It's crazy. Keep going.
Yeah. And then moving on to set 5, that's when Sakazuki dominated, and Red Green Law, just gets absolutely crushed by the Luchis. So I had to join everyone and play Sakazuki. And I feel like Sakazuki is definitely a really challenging but fun deck, just similar to how Red Green Law was, and I've been loving playing it. I got top 16 back in set 5, and then set 6 finally got my top 8 finish for Sakazuki today.
Yeah, just an amazing run. So I wanted to talk a little bit about OP6 since it's so fresh in everyone's minds. As you may know, last week was actually the very first regionals for OP6. And we didn't talk about it, but Alan did top in that event. He got 16th place with Katakuri. Can you kind of share a little bit about how you felt about OP6 and how prepared you were for these events?
Yeah, so to be honest, I wasn't really prepared going to set 6. I had just come off a vacation in Asia, so I didn't have any time to practice Sakazuki, which is what I really wanted to play. So instead, I wanted to play a deck that was really easy to upgrade. With Katakuri, you only needed the 4 copies of Hikunojos and I think 2 of each new event. And I had no OP06 at the time, so I said, all right, I'll just make that update, and then I'll just grind a few games with Katakuri, try to figure out the matchups and the playstyles, and then I took it to Santa Clara.
Yeah, yeah, that was awesome. Honestly, I'm gonna let everyone know that we had a lot of Sakazuki players in our group. I was the Saka main, Alan from O5, Steven, and David, who was top 64 at Bandai Fest as well. But basically going into OP6, in our testing groups, we were basically getting smashed playing Sakazuki. And so the week before Santa Clara, all of us kind of switched off of it because we were getting, smashed by each other playing other decks, specifically Katakuri into Sakazuki. But yeah, I think this last week you had some time to prepare for Saka and you felt confident.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I definitely had the time to finally sit down and really practice and grind out Sakazuki, and I feel like I was able to transition a lot of what I learned from O5, along with now you're dealing with having Tashigi, Moria, and a lot more options, and just try to figure out all that with all the new matchups as well.
Yeah, awesome. So let's just go ahead and get right to the business. Guys, we're going to go ahead and do a deck profile, and then we're going to hop right into the nitty gritty, which is the matchup knowledge and how to actually play this deck to 100% mastery. So Alan, why don't you get started with the your deck list? Can you let everyone know, are you playing the stage build?
Okay, I'm not playing the stage build. I'm playing the standard build. No stages.
We're gonna cover why or why not we do that right after this deck list. But yeah, let's go ahead and get us started.
Yep. So for sure, let's start with the OPTCGs. I think it's pretty standard, along with the 4 brand news. Yeah, so these are our searchers. Finds most of the cards in our deck, and it's a great early play just to kind of like a toolbox where we have so many options. We can look for either the 4-cost admirals to set up and play on our 4-dawn turn, or we can look for removal options like the 4 of Houndblades.
Yeah, so I wanted to ask you a little bit about the ratios. I know that a lot of people have different thoughts in them. Some of them run 3 Kuzans, 1 Borsellino. Some of them run 3 Borsellino, 1 Kuzan, or 3 Borsellino, 2 Kuzans. Could you share a little bit of insight on why you decided to do a 2 for 2?
Yeah, so I felt like the 2 Kuzan was definitely necessary. It helps answer so many matchups, especially Katakuri, which we've seen has been so dominant these past 2 regionals. Just having the Kuzan stick on board just answers basically all of anything they can play or trigger. Whereas the Borsellino, I felt like there are some niche matchups like Yamato or Moria where you want this extra blocker, which is really hard to remove and really sticky, and I think it just provides a very strong presence, either as a blocker or even you can start swinging with it as well.
Okay, yeah, let's keep going.
Cool. Yep. Next we have our 2Ks. We have the 4 of Surus and the 4 of Virgos, and we play the Virgos instead of the 2K Tashigis this time is because it's searchable by Tashigi. Then we have the 1 of 7 cost Borsellino. I feel like I saw the perfect amount of it just as a 1 of. You only really want to play it on curve on 7 Dawn, otherwise it's mostly going to be a pitch because you're going to be relying on the new big bad, which is the 8 cost Moria. Then we have the 3 Hinas and the 1 Helmeppo. The reason we're running Helmeppo instead of the Hina is because there's some synergy with the 8 cost Moria. We have the 3 of Lucci. We have the 4 Rebecca, which is still busted.
Let's go back a little bit on the ratios for the Hina and the Helmeppo. I've seen a bunch of variations. I think this one is the most popular, reducing 4 Hina to 3, just because you rely a lot less on the Rebecca Hina Lucci combo now, and more of just playing out the Moria, right? And Moria having synergy with Helmeppo makes you play Helmeppo as the 4th reducer. How come you didn't play 2 Helmeppos instead of 1? Did you find that you saw Helmeppo enough?
Yeah, I felt like I definitely saw Helmeppo enough. I feel like compared to the stage build, which seems to rely on Helmeppo a lot more because you're trying to do a 10 Dawn turn where you're playing the Moria into Rebecca Helmeppo, which pulls out the Hina. So you can use the lightsaber to bottom 2 things and answer usually an 8-cost Moria board. For me, I feel like I don't need it as much because I'm running, spoiler, but I'm running the Ice Ages and Great Eruptions, which do equally as much work.
Got it. Cool. Yeah, let's keep going.
Yep. So yeah, now we have the 4 of the new big boss monster, Gecko Moria, something you want to see in almost all your matchups. Great synergy. You can use the combo to either pull off, like I was saying before, a Rebecca combo with Helmeppo and Hina to pair with either Houndblaze and the lightsaber, or you can go for a Lucci combo with Meppo or Suru and pair with some reduction events like Great Eruption Ice Age. Now we have 2 Sabo. Sabo is MVP. Carries you in almost all matchups, but especially in yellow and also the mirror.
Yeah, I remember in OPO5 when we basically, I mean, I think the entire scene as a whole wasn't really familiar with Sabo. Yeah, Sabo basically ran all of the OPO5 mirror matchups. Like, if you knew how to play Sabo correctly, you're able to consistently take mirror matches. It's just something really cool. But yeah, continue.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Next, I have 2 of the lightsabers. I feel like lightsaber is also very key into most matchups. It's able to pair with the Gecko Moria very well, and also early on, it's a great tool against yellow, especially if they pull the nuts, they trigger out Kikunojo early. Being able to bottom protect a pair of Sparrow and a Kikunojo on one turn really changes the tempo and helps swing the game in your favor.
Yeah, I have tested it quite a bit. I think that going down from 2 lightsabers to 1 really lowers the your win rate against yellow. You almost need to see it at least once to address the body triggers that yellow has. So it does make your deck brick a little bit more, but which just means you have to be a little bit smarter cycling. But
Right.
If you want to beat yellow consistently, 2 lightsabers is the way to go.
Right, exactly. And then we have the 4 Great Eruptions. It's banned for a reason. It's a great tool. It cycles itself. A -2 for free is amazing. And finally, we have the 2 Ice Ages. And Ice Ages is really still a great tool against Katakuri Yellow. And also now we have all the Morias and Sakazuki's running the 8-cost Moria. So it's a great, has great synergy, especially with our leader effect, because we get -1 from the leader effect, -5, -6 Dawn. So we get the Moria at 2 Dawn, and it can be answered with the lightsaber or Houndblaze easily. Yeah, and that's it for the deck profile.
Yeah. So I think there's a question that all of us have, which is, why did you not pick the stage, right? Like, what are the differences? And we can kind of break it down, step by step. But yeah, what's your biggest reason for not running the stage build?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest reasons for sure is just comfortability. Back in 05, we didn't have the stage build, so I was used to using the Great Eruptions and Ice Ages to be able to tear apart like Katakuri and other big monsters. And another thing is that I felt like with the stage, I really missed the Great Eruptions because with the stage, it's really hard to deal with 7-cost creatures and higher up without relying on Hina a lot. Yeah. And another thing is that very early on, you can brick a lot more with stage. You could just have a bunch of stages in hand or a bunch of cards with no counter. And I feel like Great Eruption is a great solution for that. You can always, when you have extra Dawn, just use it early just to cycle out and fix your hand a lot, which I found myself doing a lot today, where I would open hands with none of the searchers, maybe a bunch of big bodies with non-counters, and I would just play Great Eruption early.
Yeah, I agree. I think something that was super underrated as a skill for soccer players back in 05 was just using the Great Eruptions as an easy cost to filter through your hand, right? Like, if you think about it, the typical deck in one game draws through maybe 10 to 15 cards, right? You draw 5 from your life, and then you draw maybe 5 to 8 like throughout your turns, right? Like turn 1, turn 2, turn 3, turn 4, turn 5. Great Eruption kind of doubles the number of cards that you draw from your deck just by playing it. So you get to see a lot more cards. You know, it being having the effect to reduce 2 is just like, I think, incredibly broken. A big reason why it's getting banned. Since there's no requirement, you can just play whenever you want. Yeah, and you know, me testing the stage build, I do feel like it is really hard to address you know, the 8 cost Moria on the 8 Dawn turn. Yeah, how do you feel about that? Like, when you play the stage build, how do you, on your 9 Dawn turn going first, how would you address that 8 Dawn Moria?
Yeah, that's exactly the struggle I found myself encountering when I was trying out this stage build, where if they did play the 8 cost Moria, then on 9 Dawn, you don't have the Ice Age anymore or Great Eruption for that extra Dawn to help reduce anything on their board. Instead, you have to rely on the stage, which is just a -1, and then you can combo maybe with a Helmeppo or Suru with the Moria, but it's just not enough, especially since you can't pair it with one of the 2 cost events yet either.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I feel like this build solves that, where you can now filter out, you can include the Great Eruption or Ice Age to deal with the 8 cost Moria, and then you still have more options next turn on 10 Dawn as well.
Yeah, so let's say, for example, they play that 8 Dawn Moria, right? They play Moria, Kuzan, brand new on you. Like, what's your response with this build?
Yep, so with this build, you can do multiple options, but going to 9 Dawn, the easiest one would be the Ice Age. So you have the Ice Age to reduce the Moria to go to 3, and then you can swing with Leader to put it to 2. And then you can then play the Gecko Moria, and then you can combo that usually with the Helmeppo and Lucci. Is probably the easiest answer, where you can then -3 to their 4 costs, putting it to 1. Now you have a 2 cost and 1 cost, you can pop it with Lucci.
Yeah, it's a lot more smooth compared to this stage. That being said, you know, there are, you know, advantages to stage. What do you feel the stage does better than the yeah, what do you feel the stage build does better compared to the standard build?
Yeah, I think when the stage has all its pieces and it's going second, right, on its 10 Dawn turn, it has such an efficient removal. You can do the 8 cost Moria, you grab the Rebecca, and you grab the Helmeppo. Then you can reduce their Moria and then also their 4 cost at the same time by playing out the Hina. And then you just use the lightsaber and you get a bottom deck both the 4 cost and the Moria at the same time. And also, I feel like it's really good against when it gets going. It's really good because it has -1 Dawn with the stage and -1 Dawn from the leader. So any 4 drops that the opponent plays, whether that's Kiku Nojo or any of the Moria's 4 drops, you can answer pretty easily just with a swing and 1 removal.
So yeah, just letting you guys know, both builds are incredibly strong. You know, Sakazuki is, you know, the best leader for a reason. Moving on into April 19th, when the 3 Brothers starter deck releases, Black Yellow Luffy is a really strong contender for the meta, and it's actually a really it's a really strong matchup against Moria, right? And so this is where Sakazuki really shines, is that both builds kind of really do really well into Black Yellow Luffy, and Sakazuki, being a strong deck overall, is playable into basically every matchup, and, you know, more often than not, winning. You know, that is a preview into the future. I think what we want to focus on now is let's dive into how you play this deck, Alan. I think, you know, you're a really strong player yourself, very good fundamentals, lots of technical ability. You have, you know, out of all of us, you're probably the best at just picking up a deck and getting it to a really great mastery in a short amount of time. You know, Sakazuki being one of them. Yeah, let's talk about how you address the matchup. So, starting off with Moria, what's your game plan going against Moria?
Yeah, so for Moria, we definitely want to, with this build, take first away from them, just because Moria has such a dominant curve going first. They can go turn 1 Sindri into, if they don't play, use their ability and pop out either Perona or any other of their filler works. And then they can go to 5 Dawn, they can do a brand new, and again, use the leader effect. And then 7 Dawn, another leader effect with a 4 drop. So you can see how quickly they can flood the board with strong 4 drops that can just keep swinging at you. So being able to take that away from them is a huge factor. beyond that, we have a lot of good tools. We have the Hound Blazes and the lightsabers. I think are definitely key in terms of just answering all their 4-drops easily, and then while being able to then take control of the board, and then we can start swinging with our own bodies. So being able to play the searchers early will help develop bodies on the board, and then we can keep swinging at them with Hound Blazes, and then we can keep developing board with blue cheese. And I think the 7-cost Borsellino on curve is also a really great answer. It answers any of their 4-drops, and then they're going to be playing their 8-cost Gecko Moria into it, which means that this is not going to get answered by anything they play, and then this is just a big 8K body that's going to start swinging at them.
Yeah, I think from the Moria side, there's actually a lot of cards in this Sakazuki matchup that we don't really want to see, right? For the first ones being both the Emeralds, I think Kuzan being on board is kind of like a do you have it check, where like if Moria doesn't have eruption and removal to address the Kuzan, especially if the Kuzan sticks for any longer than a single turn, then the game's pretty much over. So we don't want to see Kuzans. We also don't want to see Porcellinos because they're really sticky on board. And I think Sabos really hurt us. And I think the last card that we don't want to see, like you mentioned, is that 7-cost Porcellino curve. We can't address it with Moria, and it just sticks on board. It's a free swing. And typically after we play our Moria, you play your own, and then it's just sort of a battle between Morias, right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and I feel like that's also another reason that Sakazuki does so well, is that it has such an advantage being able to filter with its leader effect, that you can set up the grave a lot easier with the cards that you actually want to set up for your 8-cost Gecko Moria.
Yeah. There are other decks that are able to play Moria, for example, Perona. But I think the biggest difference between, those decks and Moria and Saka is, Moria can always get, the leader Moria can get 8-cost Moria from the graveyard. That's their consistent way of drawing it. Sakazuki just draws and filters through a crap ton of cards, right? Great Eruptions, Sabos, hand filtering every single turn with the leader ability. That's what kind of separates those two from the rest. Okay, so that's great. Overall, do you feel favored into Moria? Is it 50-50? Like, what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I think after getting a lot more practice into the matchup, I do feel like it is slightly Sakazuki favored, especially if Sakazuki takes first. Going second, I can see it being more of a 50-50 matchup.
Yeah, I personally think Moria is favored going first, but I'm a Moria stan. Okay, next up is let's talk about Katakuri. How do you think that this build does against Katakuri?
Yeah, I think this build does really well into Katakuri. Again, the options of having the Hound Blazes and the Amas deals with any of their triggers really easily, and once you have control of the board and you're able to set up your blockers, then you have control of the whole game, and it's not much Katakuri can do beyond that. And one tip I have for playing against Katakuri is that you shouldn't be afraid to go to 0 life early, because you're removing so much value that they have from their 7 moms, their 10 moms, and their reject. And then that being said, you do want to be able to support being at 0 life, which means that you want to have the blockers like the Borsellino, the Rebecca's, and most importantly, the Sabo, which is going to protect your board and cannot be answered with Amaru or reject.
Yeah, this is actually an advice that I got recently from a really, really great player, possibly one of the best that we have, known as Yonas. Yonas is, if you guys don't already know, was the Bandai Fest overall winner and went 6th place in Worlds. The advice that he gave to us was, go down to 0 life. It doesn't really matter. As long as you can support it with, a Sabo or, like you said, Porcellino or Rebecca. I think a lot of players are really afraid of yellow just because all the body triggers and like Thunderbolts, Nami Thunderbolts, or the re-lifes that they have, and that is really tough, right? But I think when you break it down and you get down to that 0 life, you take away a lot of the options that Katakuri has, namely Reject, which is possibly one of the most broken spells in the game. When you're at 0 life, they can't reject you. they can't take away your life, and they can't go down below 2 life to control it so that they can activate a Maru, which means you're safe from a lot of plays. No Katakuri build right now runs Thunderbolt, so they can't go down from 2 life to 1 life on their own, which is really great, right? As long as you have a blocker established, and they don't have enough swings on board, which, you know, you're clearing them every single turn, you can basically control the game to the point where your board is wide and get them down to that 2 life scenario and set up a lethal turn on your next turn, right?
Yep, exactly.
Yeah. So I guess, you know, a quick tidbit is, you know, what do you think the stage build does differently compared to the standard build in this matchup?
Yeah, so the stage build, I feel like, can have some good options in Katakuri just because, again, with the ability to -1 from the stage and -1 with the leader effect, it sets they play a lot of 4-drops like Sanji and Kikunojo, and those can also come out from trigger. So you have a quick and easy answer to deal with them as long as you have some removal spell. And of course, the stage build typically runs more copies of these spell event removals, so it also is in their favor in that spell.
So I'd say like the stage is slightly favored, more favored into yellow, just because of the a little bit more of abundance in removal early game. But yeah, how does it equivocally deal with those 10 moms? Do you think?
Yeah, I feel like that's where it can be a bit of a struggle, where it can, if you're clearing the 10 mom, then you're dedicating your whole turn to it. Yes, you can do the Gecko Moria, Rebecca, Helmeppo into a 2-cost event, but because you're dedicating all of your reduction and removal to just the 10 mom, then if there's suddenly a trigger or anything from their life and you get really unlucky, then you don't have an answer for that. And suddenly you can turn not in your favor. So yeah, that is the one drawback, I would say.
Yeah, but overall, I think for both builds, if you play the right way, if you play solid, you should have an overwhelming. I wouldn't say overwhelming, but I think you're in a good favor against Katakuri, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, cool. All right, let's move on to yeah, the ladder of the big three. What do you do in the mirror? How do you succeed there?
Yeah, so I know a lot of people say that the mirror is just about who wins the dice roll and who finds more ACOS Gecko Morias. And I think that is important. It does play a big factor into it. But I think it goes back a lot to the core of basically what the O5 mirror, soccer mirrors were like, where you're trying to be as efficient as you can with your cards to be able to deal with their board while you're developing your own board and you're also putting on pressure. And I think with that, just being able to find these searchers early on and being able to pair them with plays just to keep poking at their life and force them to either go down to 1 or 2 life, or for them to start giving out cards from the hand, I think is very important.
Yeah. What made so like back in 05, everyone said like, oh, the first player to play Rebecca Hinalucci is the one that loses. But like I really disagree with that, right? Like you said, it was all about the efficiency. Whoever played their cards use the least amount of cards to do as many actions as possible. And for me, I believe the first person to counter inefficiently, right? When you have to block a 7k swing or maybe even a 9k swing just because you can't survive, you know, that's a person that usually ends up losing because they lose too many cards from their hand. So I guess the question that I think would benefit a lot of players who are struggling into the mirror is, what are your cycle priorities? Like, are you keeping these Rebeccas? Are you keeping the Luccis, like the Hinas? Because back in 05, you used to keep Rebecca and Hina, but now it's different because you have to hold on to more cards. So what are your pitching priorities?
Right, exactly. So I would say there's definitely a lot less priority now on keeping the Hinas and Wabuchis because, again, your 8-on turn is no longer going to be the RHL combo that is the key to it, but the 8-cost Gecko Moria. And for the 8-cost Gecko Moria to be effective, you want to have your discard pile filled with basically these options. So you do want Rapluchis and your searchers and potentially even reducers like Suru and Hamapo in the discard early. So that's leading up to the 8-on turn. earlier on, cycle priorities for the mirror, you don't need to value the 2Ks as much early on, especially the Virgo. Rather, you want to focus on building up resources and removal options like the Hound Blazes and the Lightsabers to deal with their ward, and also being able to establish strong or sticky units, especially the Kuzan, just because it's a floater.
Yeah. Do you play that Porcelino? Do you play that in this matchup if you're going first?
Yes, I think it's still a very strong option going first on curve, having the 7 Dawn, because again, if they decide to respond with the 8 cost Gecko Moria, it is they won't have an option to remove the 7 cost, which means it's a free AK body swing at either their board or their leader before it gets to.
Cool. Awesome. Yeah, so just wrapping that up, you basically have less of a priority on keeping the Luchis, the Hinas. Instead, you want to prioritize getting your reductions in hand, eruptions, Ice Age, Hound Blaze, Lightsabers, and you want to play that 7 cost Porcelino on curve because they can't deal with it if they respond with Moria. And then after that, it's more of just playing Moria and being efficient with your hand, right?
Exactly.
Do you say? I think that there's a lot of talk about going first or second. Do you think second is still preferred in the mirror?
Yeah, I think second is definitely still more preferred, just because again you can have the Brandy or Toshigi on 2 Dawn into a 4 Dawn Admiral, and then you get to have the A-cost Moria first. And if you can establish the A-cost Moria and do it for value by playing, for example, a Kuzan from this card and a Toshigi, then you just up so many cards, and then if you have a second Moria, then that can be now that you have so many more cards, so many more options to deal with whatever they play, usually another Moria, then a follow-up Moria is equally as devastating.
Yeah. By the way, guys, we call that the greed line. Greed line means playing Moria into Kuzan into Brandy or Toshigi. It's a +2 hand advantage, and it is greedy, so you have to be careful when you play it because it means you're not addressing your opponent's board and they can swing hard into you. But usually when you're drawing so many cards, sort of like a mini Kaido, right? You can usually counter out, and then you're better off than not, because problem with that for your opponent is they have to address both the Moria and the Kuzan, and in often cases there's a higher priority removing Kuzan than removing Moria, which means usually when you play this, by the next turn you might have Moria as a 9k beater alive on your board, which is huge, right? Okay. Yeah. Exactly. Okay, moving on from that, let's talk about some other more like meta matchups, just not part of the big three. Let's talk about Reiju. What do you think about Reiju?
Yeah, I think Reiju, a Reiju that finds the God curve can be definitely really scary. One that changes the Ichiji back and forth, because it's really hard to deal with, just because it's a 7 cost 7k body with rush, and the 7 cost is just really hard to deal with if we don't have the Ice Age early with the Hound Blaze, or with the Hina leader swing and some kind of removal. But if it's not Ichiji rush, then I think as long as we keep up our game plan, which is just bottom decking a lot of the big bodies, right? The most important bodies are the Reiju and the Ichiji, so that if they don't find another one, then they're basically screwed. Then we can eventually get to our 8 cost Gecko Moria turn and swing the game into our favor.
Yeah, what are some key cards that you're playing against Reiju?
Yeah, I think for sure the most important are going to be, again, the Hound Blazes and the Armors, just to bottom deck their Reijus and Ichijis as soon as possible. The Ice Ages are a really quick and easy answer to the Ichijis. And then beyond that, just having, I think Rebecca is also very important, just because it can allow you to grab either the Hina and recycle it and use it again, or grab a 2k and then have a blocker that can stop the aggressiveness from the Ichiji.
Yeah. And probably, guys, there's a less of a priority on playing Kuzan or Porcelino early on, just because that's a prime target for Reiju to bounce, right?
Right. The Niji being able to bounce these 4 costs on curve is sets us back too much, so we definitely want to prioritize that less.
Yeah, and I think, what do you think is kind of like the borderline when you should be kind of afraid that you're going to be losing this game, right? Like, how many ECGs do they play for you to kind of get worried about the game state?
Yeah, I think one ECG is fine. It's usually when they get ECG into ECG, and then I'm not able to answer the first one fast enough. That's when I'm usually worried.
Okay, so 2 or more.
Yeah, 2 or more, yeah. I'd say.
Okay, moving on. What about, I think this is the last one that we should probably cover. Yamato. I don't know how to say it. Yamato. What do you think about the Sky Island version, which is the aggressive version, and the Fortress one?
Yeah, I would say the Sky Island aggressive variant is definitely a lot scarier for Sakazuki, just because, again, we are a 4-cost leader and we only run 8 2Ks. So if they start keep hammering us with big swings from the vid, then eventually we will go down to 0. And if we don't have the blockers like Rebecca and Sabo and Rosalino to help stave off some of the aggression, then we're going to be screwed really quickly. Versus the Supernova builds, the wall builds with the 8-cost kid, I feel like because we have so much removal, we can deal with that a lot easier. We can establish Kuzans, we know to keep the Ice Ages for that matchup, then we're okay.
Yeah. I'd say, what do you think are the key cards to play in that Sky Island matchup?
Yeah, I think one of the most important cards is going to be the Rebecca. It's because against the aggro Yamato, we just want to have a blocker just to be a chump blocker to remove and just stave off the aggression. And it's going to help us pick up a Virgo and extra 2Ks from the trash, which is always helpful against Yamato.
Yeah, in that matchup, I feel that 2K counters are sort of a premium. You can never have too many in your hand, so Rebecca is kind of, you get to you cheat out your vanilla Hina, which is great since it's an extra swing, and then you also get to grab a 2K counter from your graveyard. In addition, I think this is why we're running 1 or 2 Borsalinos in every Saka build, is because they sort of, not as good as Rebecca, but they act as that 5th and 6th blocker that we can play in our turn 2, turn 3 turns, right? Ideally, turn 3, do you always play a blocker against Yamato?
Yes, ideally, if we can. I'd much rather have the blocker than have something like the Kuzan setup or a Lucci, just because it adds the extra insurance in case of anything like even surprise triggers or any rush characters that they can play.
Yeah, despite all this, what do you think the odds are? Like, how do you think Yamato is favored against Saka, or is it the other way around?
From all the testing I've done against Yamato, I would say that it is definitely favored, but it can swing into our favor if we do find the key pieces, being the Rebecca and some searchers early.
Yeah, and then for the Fortress build, I think I can answer this. It is a lot easier to deal with, to the point where I think Sakazuki is favored. I think the Fortress build for Yamato has better matchups across the board. But against Saka, it's just not as aggressive enough. It gives us more time to play Rebecca and find those pieces.
Right.
I would say, and feel free to disagree or agree with me. I'd say once you find at least 5 of your 2K counters, 5 of the 8 of them, you're safe from the game, right? I think the name of the game here is to build, not necessarily to build a wall of blockers, since Hori Jones goes around that, but to basically find all your 2K counters and set up obviously lethal, right? So find 2K counters while hammering away at Yamato's hand, and all that stuff.
Exactly, yeah, and I think in this matchup, just having little 5K swings, just keep poking at them is really important, and then just having Dawn up to react to whatever they might trigger as well.
Yeah. All right. So thank you so much, Alan, for this awesome in-depth discussion about all the meta matchups, guys. Above all else, we are a Sakazuki team. We know how to play this deck. We've mastered in 05 and now into 06. We're slowly getting our results. So before we talk about everything else, Alan, do you have any shout outs that you would like to make?
Yes, for sure. Yes. Huge shout out to my wife, Catherine. She's been the most supportive throughout this whole One Piece journey. Also, a big shout out to my best friend, Nick. He was here with me doing the 10-round grind today and was just giving me the moral support throughout. Big shout out, of course, to the Team PDC. Thanks for all the help and all the training. And, of course, to all the wonderful players and game stores I met here in the Bay Area.
Yeah. So, yeah, Alan and I are both part of this same team, Team PDC. If you guys like this content, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. I know I should put it at the start of the video, but I forgot. We also offer, coaching and advice via our Patreon, where, we can kind of spend a lot more time discussing and deep diving into specific criteria and specific areas of the game. So if you want to level up your game and top at these high-level events, we're here for you. Yeah, just let us know if you guys need coaching, or if you guys are interested in playing Sakazuki at a high level. So this was really great. Thank you so much, Alan. Honestly, guys, this guy is a 4-time serial winner, 6 top 8s, 2 second place finishes. The only thing he's really missing from his name is a first place finish. I think we have an inside bet between the two of us who's gonna take a first place finish first. My bet is it's me, but he always tells me he's he's better. So we'll see, Alan. We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see.
All right. Thank you guys so much, but I'll see you on the next one. Bye.
Thank you, everyone.